Everybody, welcome to the Soul Food Priest podcast with Father Ben. It's great to have you. I'm here with Kira, Roddy, and Sylvie Vega. What's up?
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Hello. All good. We are in 2025.
Yes.
We are.
So how do you celebrate a new year?
When you guys get
he gets away from everybody.
So once I get, for me, it's really nice because I got paroled and went home, and a night out on the town for me is going to Kroger and having a martini, a cigar,
You got
and
paroled
a
from
bed.
Jesus? Is that what you're saying? Is that?
From, let's leave it at that.
Okay.
I got a little respite. And, yes. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, a little requiem in pace. And so, but yeah, so it was really nice. It was really
Good.
nice. And I usually reserve the New Year's Eve night, do some prayer, pray for all the people that I buried this past year.
Okay.
And then we do that in a little chapel that we have here in the house. And then had a martini and a cigar and called it a night.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful. That's my time of goodwill to the Lord. It was so beautiful. It was so nice.
That's beautiful, though, that
It is
you,
really beautiful.
you pray for everybody that you
Try
buried.
to.
That's,
Yeah.
that's
I've
beautiful.
got a list that I keep, and so I
I think
read 'em
you're
off.
good, Father. I think you might be good.
Well, I told you the deal I make with them. I said when I go to visit them in the hospital, people, I'm like, here's the deal. I'll give you last rites and I'll bury you, but when you meet the big guy, you got to put in a good word for me.
Yep.
And I'm like, don't forget.
Got you.
Yeah. Yes. Totally.
Love it.
So.
Oh, yeah.
We usually have like pretty big plans for New Year's Eve. You know, karaoke comes out and all that. I don't sing, but so
I would love to see that.
We end up having so much fun. But then this year I was sick, so
Everybody was sick this year.
the party planning kind of lacked. But then my daughter, though, she pulled in right at like the last 30 minutes and turned our whole den into a party room.
Oh, really?
Good.
And we did a countdown, and there was a lot of shouting and screaming and insanity, and
That's
it
good.
was great.
You know,
But see,
that's a sign.
it was
Of,
like,
that's a sign
wow.
of everybody being alive, healthy,
Indeed.
and going.
And but you,
your house.
we have heard you sing because we've done carpool karaoke. I know you sing.
I don't.
And
You got a good
You
Christmas tunes
yeah.
in there.
yeah.
I mean, really, it was really great. It sounded great when we turned the volume up.
We did.
Too.
We distorted it
So
a little bit.
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. It sounded a lot like Sylvia.
You're great.
I am not a singer.
Oh, you got a great voice.
But I would have to say the sweetest moment did happen though this New Year's. I'm not a country music fan, but there was country music and everything. And so my husband really likes Garth Brooks. So he was like wanting to hear some Garth Brooks music. And so he told my daughter, I want to play a song for you. And he played this song. It was If Tomorrow Never Comes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a
beautiful
great
song.
song.
Oh, my
great
God.
song.
And they danced.
Oh,
Great song. Great song.
That's awesome.
Oh my God.
That's so beautiful.
I sat
That's
back.
how you start off the new year.
It was. And then, and that's what I told him. We were going in mass the next morning. I was like, you know what? You started off the new year like on
Yeah,
top.
he raised the bar.
Like,
raised the bar.
You can only go down from here. Like, really and truly. Unless you decide you want to just keep going up. Then, like, great. I'll fully support that. But you started 2025,
That is really-
like, way
That's
high
really
up
beautiful.
there. And,
Yes.
and so then when she was done dancing, she was like, are you crying? I'm like, no, you're crying. I'm not crying. You're crying.
Well, we want to thank everybody that has been with us since last year, and
Yay.
we've got
And the year before?
Yes, and please continue to watch us throughout this year. We've got great topics for you. We have a great topic today, Father, and we always listen to what you guys want to hear us talk about, and we bring those in and we bring them to Father Ben. And we've got a great, strong topic for you today.
Nice light stuff. And so we have they sometimes will ask us a little bit about the history of Catholicism in the United States.
Yes.
And it's something very close to my heart. There was a guy named Monsignor John Tracy Ellis, who, among other people, was one of the teachers of Cardinal Tim Dolan. And then Cardinal Dolan taught us in the seminary. So John Tracy Ellis was a famous historian from Catholic University. Anyway, so he and Cardinal Dolan have both talked a lot about some of the challenges that we've gone through in the United States as Catholics, namely what we would call anti-Catholicism. And so there's a book that came out in 2003 by Dr. Philip Jenkins. I may have told you guys about it, I can't remember. He's not Catholic. And the name of the book is called The New Anti-Catholicism, The Last Acceptable Prejudice.
I think you mentioned it before.
Yeah. And he teaches, used to teach at Penn State. And so he makes this point about how some of the challenges that we've gone through in the United States from a Catholic perspective. So going back to the 13 colonies, there was deep anti-Catholicism. Why? Because they associated the Pope, they didn't call us Catholics, they called us Papists. So they associated the Pope with the crown.
Wow.
So like King George. So, and they thought, I mean, they really thought the Pope controlled us, like kind of minions, right? And so, and then all throughout in the 1850s, there was the Know Nothing Party, and which we've talked about before, the Know Nothing Party, that they would burn down Catholic churches when the police came to them and said, we know nothing, we don't know anything. And that was kind of the precursor largely to the Ku Klux Klan that also hated not just African Americans, but Catholics. And really, to be honest with you, it really was not up until 1928 that there's a politician in New York, his name was Al Smith. And Al Smith was openly Catholic, and that was it's hard for us to imagine in our time, but it's massive shockwaves in the political system because no one, even up until 1928, they did not trust Catholics.
It's incredible.
And then and he was not elected, but still even after this, then really it wasn't until the Second World War that we had so many Catholics serving in the armed forces that it gradually began to change. And then, of course, with the election of JFK. But that even when JFK was elected, that was a big deal because he had to say, look, every time I make a decision, I'm not calling the Pope to ask his permission. But they really thought this, right?
Yeah.
They really thought this. And so it's really interesting how a lot of this is developed, and people would say, okay, well, where do we see anti-Catholicism in our modern day? And this is just my opinion. I realize people would disagree, which is fine, but I think we tend to see that largely, at least in the public sphere, in three areas. In the secular press and the entertainment media, but in my opinion, there's probably no more anti-Catholic sentiment in the United States today than in university classrooms.
I agree.
Even in universities that are publicly Catholic. I mean, and I know literally dozens of people that have sat in those classrooms and said that their teachers were openly anti-Catholic at a Catholic institution. And here's the irony: the average tuition for 1 year at those institutions is about $75,000. That's for an undergraduate. So they're paying 75 times 4, going in Catholic, leaving, graduating an atheist, and so parents are like, what happened? What happened? And the whole time writing checks. And so, but I think and of course I'm being grossly general when I say this, but I can't underscore how common this is. And so, all that to say, we live with a lot of that in our own time.
Well, when I was in college, I remember, I don't remember if it was it was probably really early on. I'm thinking second, third semester. During my philosophy class, I actually loved that class. But a lot of my paperwork the papers that I turned in were very religious based. Like I was like, hey, this is my opinion. And I remember my professor would come in and say, you gotta like not only focus on that and just like, and I was like, well, this is kind of what I really think. This is how I feel. So he discouraged me from looking at it in that way and was like, no, I need you to hear. And my paper was perfectly fine. He just didn't want me to focus on my beliefs. And I get it, but I mean, my work was pretty, I mean, I got an A. I would get A's in that class, but it's like, stop only thinking religiously. And I get it. I get it, but why would you discourage someone from bringing God into their everyday lives, or even into a paper, which was a great paper? It was different thoughts, especially in philosophy. It's very easy to bring the two together. But yeah, I do remember the discouragement of don't bring God into the classroom.
Which is really interesting and ironic because philosophy is the study of wisdom. And so you need to know the ultimate wise one. To really know philosophy.
There definitely is some irony there, right? I mean, especially that, I mean, to your point, the liberal arts system started with Catholicism in the 9th century in France, and what they call, in those days, it was called the trivium and the quadrivium. And so those brought together became the liberal arts system as we have it. And yet so much of liberal education finds a lot of its origin in what's called liberalism, which, there's I should say liberalism is a little bit different. A lot of that is based around what's called the Enlightenment era philosophy, which rejects a lot of the Catholic notion of faith and reason. Whereas we would say that, hey, look, faith and reason go hand in hand. They're not diametrically opposed. And an authentic liberal arts education actually came from Catholicism. I mean, and I tell people, like, look, I realize people probably think I'm biased. I'm a priest. This is a historical fact. Look it up. And so, in other words, that it's really vital that people, I think, when we understand Catholicism, the roots of Catholicism have always supported the independence of the sciences. And so, like, people always say, for instance, it's either science or religion. And we've never thought that way. Like, for instance, we don't have Catholic mathematics, Catholic algebra. There's Catholic geography. I mean, Catholic No, there is mathematics that has its objective truth and accounting. You don't have Catholic accounting. But one of the things that we've tried to do is support the liberal arts system, which would include these things. Right? It really would. I mean, and rhetoric and all that stuff that it started off with. But it's really important, I think, as Catholics, that we understand that we are going to encounter some anti-Catholicism. Even sometimes in our own families, Jesus said a mother-in-law will be divided against her daughter-in-law, a father against his son, a son against his father. Sometimes we encounter that even in families, especially around politics.
Well, I think that's also, it's really important to know your faith. And I've always said, in order for me to bring the word of Jesus, I need to be able to know what I'm talking about and what I believe in. So it's so important, like you said, they go hand in hand. We need to know our faith, and we need to get down to the roots and know what we believe in. There's no way that if you come up to me and tell me, no, you're incorrect, that I will know that there's blind faith, and that's okay. You can you can believe in Christ without knowing books, and that's beautiful. But if you're going to be in a situation where your faith might be tested, you need to know your stuff. And like you said, it's in the books. It's right there. And a lot of people that are anti-Catholicism, or they are atheists, they just don't want to believe, and they don't really look into the books, or they look at the books and they're like, open your mind.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just open it right there in front of you. And I think it's very important to really know your faith and what you believe in, no matter what. But if you're Catholic, know your faith.
Yeah.
Please go to Bible study. We've got a lot. That's it, Michael.
We do.
So what is it that you think, because I mean, it's been obviously the growth of the church has taken root because of the blood of the martyrs. So obviously anti-Catholicism is nothing new for the church. What do you think ultimately is the reason for that?
In the United States?
United States or just all across history, because I would almost, kind of what I'm thinking is it all boils down to a similar thing. Because I mean, I think a lot of the people talk about our culture as being very discouraging, very relative and all of that. And, all types of, unchastity and all those different types of things and corruption. But if you study history, it's nothing new under the sun. Like some of the things that we're doing now, I'm like, you saw that back in Roman times or in Greek times or, all of that kind of stuff. So, what do you think, and why, I guess in most cultures, does there tend to be an anti-Catholic view? Yeah,
it's a very good question, and it's a broad question. I mean, I'm not the oracle or the authority on anything, and Pope Benedict XVI addressed this, and he said some of the worst attacks against Catholicism come from within Catholicism. Some of the horrible examples we've seen over the centuries, and we've seen many amazing ones too. But and I think that's something worth pointing out. I think that part of it comes from a lack of education, like Catholics that don't know their faith. And that don't take the time to know their faith. They love their faith, but they'd much rather watch football and Game of Thrones. Right. So it's just not. It's not a priority to them to learn something. And whereas some people are hopefully trying to learn something, even if it's watching a silly podcast with a short bald man, right? And so hopefully we're all trying to grow. But I do think that like as some of that is ignorance. Part of it is that people listen to very imprudent counsel, like people that they think would know the truth but don't know the truth, and they perpetuate a falsehood, like Catholics worship Mary, for instance. And instead of researching it, well, it says here that they don't worship Mary, so why are we saying this, right? And so a lot of Catholics could really benefit from learning more what we would call apologetics.
Yes.
And it's just basic things. How do we get the Bible? How do we get the sacraments? Basic things like that. Even if we ask, I think it's safe to say a lot of Catholics, do you know how we got the Bible? Do you know, how did we get the sacraments? Not many could answer that question. I mean, and so they've been Catholic their whole life.
Yeah.
How do we get the rosary? I mean, some of the basic things. So to answer your question, I think, in my opinion, I think a lot of it is ignorance. Even with like radical Islam, sometimes we see extreme anti-Catholicism from some of the Orthodox churches, like the former Russian patriarch Alexei, who's since passed, is pretty anti-Catholic against John Paul II, because they had in their brain that we're trying to proselytize sheep steal, and so there was this reticence and a kind of an allergy to Catholicism. So that it's kind of a combination of factors, long-winded way.
Yeah. Interesting.
So let's learn our faith.
Yeah, because we're being tried.
Yeah.
A lot. I mean, we're being tried in the sense of we just, now we're in 2025, and as soon as we start off in 2025, there's bombings or a guy, going down the street, and
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one of those things where we're being tried in that sense, that we're seeing the apparent evil all around us. And so it's not so much that there's like just this anti-Catholicism, but just how do we live life in this world where there is so much evil surrounding us, and it's very obvious and very apparent, and how do we bring the light of Christ and the hope of Christ in the world, because that's ultimately, as Catholics, that's what we're called to do. You know, it's not necessarily like just memorize the catechism and recite catechism quotes and paragraphs, you know, and everything, but let all of those, all of Christ's words and your relationship with him just take over your life, and let him, you know, come into the world. And then you'll be quoting all kinds of stuff and didn't even know you could do it. You know? So, but that's true. You know, so it's
now that's kind of the symbolism of our baptismal candle. When we, at our baptism, you're the light of the world, Jesus says, right? And so go into the world and do something with it. Ite missa est, the mass is ended, go in peace. I mean, that's what we're saying, the last line of the mass, go out and do something with this, even if in one's own mind, if it's something small, like, honey, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for everything you do for me, and for our family, right? And so I think really it's one of the hardest things, I think, for parents too. We have to come to the realization that you got to let them go.
Yeah.
I mean, when they go to college, honey, best of luck. I love you.
You're almost there.
God be with you and bless you. I mean, it's
May. Oh
it's
my gosh.
yeah.
It's happening in May.
Okay, listen to the next part.
I mean, it's we have to let him go, right? And it's the prodigal son's father standing on the porch watching. I mean, and they have to make their own decisions, and they may leave for a while and then come back later, and but they gotta own it.
This Christmas Eve, you gave a beautiful homily, Father, and you talked a lot about hope. And I remember sitting there in full choir loft because we were so blessed to have a full church, and I mean, people were from downstairs came upstairs, and you just had this beautiful thing of saying, you know, just think of hope, and you know, baby Jesus brings us this hope that anything can happen, all the best can happen. So I'm thinking, with all this craziness in the world, all this anti-Catholicism, anything, keep your eyes on the light, who is Christ. And let's just have hope that whatever it is that's going on, it can be something beautiful. It can become something beautiful. You can make all the craziness be beautiful.
That's right.
With the help of Jesus. So.
That's right. And it's a day-by-day choice.
Yes.
It's a day-by-day choice to kind of have the anti-venom to discouragement. You know, so we hope that you will join us again, and please know that our prayers go with you. Don't forget to put soul in your food and give food to your soul. God bless you.